Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. How's the audio, guys? Let me know if the music is too loud, because I can turn it down. How is the music and the audio? How's everything? How's the balance of audio? Can you hear me clearly? The music is a little loud. I could definitely turn it down. Most people are saying it's perfect. Maybe I just turn it down just like a tiny little smidge. Because I don't want it to be too loud. Okay. Hi guys. Today we got a very special topic. Very, very special topic today. And it's one of my favorite book series, Hyperion. The Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. So that's going to be awesome. Okay. So before we get started, just a disclaimer. We're really going to be focusing on the first two books in the series. You're saying you can't hear the music now? Well, that's okay. We don't really need the music to be super loud. And if you can't hear it, then it's really on StreamYard. I can hear it in my ear. So it's apparently playing. But anyway, we're going to be focusing mainly on the first two books this time. So we got Hyperion and The Fall of Hyperion, right? So there are two other books, Endymion and Rise of Endymion, but we're not going to dive too much into those because they add a lot. We'll talk about them a little bit because we will be discussing just like a little bit of it, but we won't be diving into those two here. We're mainly going to be focusing on the first book mainly, and also The Fall of Hyperion, with a little bit of what happens in the other two, because of course there's like a time jump and a bunch of new characters are introduced, and it's like a whole thing. It's a little bit Dune-esque, I would say, because it's kind of the way it jumps, right? The way it jumps, and then you're introduced to all these new things. It's very similar to the way God Emperor has that huge jump. And then the later books, Heretics and Chapter House, have that huge jump. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically the gist of what we will be doing today. And yeah, we'll go for a few hours. We've got a lot to get through here, guys. I have like 12 pages of notes here that I've taken. So we've got a lot to go through. We're going to go through the characters. We're not going to dive into the story of each character because, as you know, like Hyperion, it tells like the story of 7 pilgrims, and they're all connected to this being called the Shrike on this world called Hyperion. We're not going to dive into everybody's story, but I'm going to pick out the most important ones to discuss. And just discuss like some of the main lore, you know, the Technocore, the Shrike, a bit about the Ousters, the 9 Labyrinthine worlds, which are a super interesting concept. One thing that's great about Hyperion is that Dan Simmons does some really, really great world building here. It's some of the best world building in science fiction, I think. And it's really like, it's I don't know, it's empire building. I don't know what would be the proper term because it's beyond the world. It's universe building. And he does a really good job with like creating a lot of mystery, and then also just making everything seem so, real. It all feels very real here. And I should mention too, there's a lot of inspiration from Dune here. I think one of the main bits of inspiration comes from the fact that this book has this series has a lot of religious themes from the beginning and continuing into the 2 sequels after Fall of Hyperion. There are major religious themes throughout it. So that's a big part of this as well. So I'm just going to poll the chat real quick. I don't think YouTube lets you do like actual polls. Can I? Oh, I totally can. So I'm going to poll the chat. Have you read Hyperion? And I want you guys to vote. And let's see what amount of you have actually read it. Because if you have not read it, there will be spoilers in this live stream. Obviously, we can't talk about it without spoilers. But I know some of you are perfectly fine with spoilers, and that's totally okay for some of you. So if you're fine with spoilers, then continue forward. But if that's something that like messes up your enjoyment of things and you're planning on reading this, then probably don't watch. Yeah. But if you don't plan on reading it and you just want to hear a cool story, you just want to like explore a really cool sci-fi book series, like this is the live stream for you. And I did get a couple super chats. Jake Evans, thank you for your 2 super chats. And yes, the ending of The Fall of Hyperion is very poetic. The entire series is very poetic. And that's an interesting thing about it, too. Hyperion and The Fall of Hyperion are both named after poems written by John Keats, right? So John Keats wrote Hyperion, and then he began writing this poem called The Fall of Hyperion, but he died before it was ever finished. So Dan Simmons took those names and used them for his series. And also, interestingly enough, there is a character named John later on who is like a clone. He's like I'll get into it, but they're like these cybernetic mental clones of people, and John Keats actually appears in this. It's a whole thing. This is a very, 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 very expansive series. Super expansive series that covers a lot of different things and a lot of different characters, and yet it never feels overwhelming the way especially in the first book. It's a really easy book to dive into that doesn't feel overwhelming. A lot of science fiction, you pick it up and immediately you're just like hit in the face with like the overwhelming like detail of it all. But the way Dan Simmons presents things through like telling the stories of each one of these pilgrims is very, very effective. So before I get ahead of myself, let me just basically set things up for you. So Hyperion is set hundreds of years in our future. So we have the hegemony of man. And we have CEO Maynard Gladstone. She's like the president slash military commander. She's like, yeah. So this is a time in humanity's future where we have been to many different planets, and many of the planets within the hegemony are connected through devices called Farcasters. And we also have fat line technology, which allows communication across the vacuum of space. And I see some of you are asking about the art that is here. This is art by Noriyoshi Orei. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Noriyoshi Orei. That's who did the art that's up here right now. So the reason we have this fat line technology, the reason that we have this Farcaster technology, is because of the Technocore. Now, the Technocore is a conglomerate of sentient AI that exist adjacent to the hegemony. And they're not under our dominion. We're not under their dominion. They kind of exist like side by side to humanity. But they're very mysterious. Like, we don't really know a lot about them, but they've given us a bunch of technology that's allowed us to advance. Farcaster technology and fatline technology. There's also forms of faster than light travel, like the Hawking Drive, but that's subject to things like relativity. So Farcaster technology is like instantaneous. So that's a huge, huge difference. And there are also worlds that are outside of the hegemony's control, and there are also humans that are outside of the hegemony's control. So these are the ousters, and the ousters are like these humans that live on the outskirts of the hegemony, and they augment themselves. They sometimes live in colonies in outer space. They sometimes have wings, and they're constantly getting into various conflicts with the hegemony. The constantly conflicts happening between the ousters and the hegemony. And there's also, we'll get into this later, but there are greater forces at work that are playing into all of this, stoking these conflicts. But we will get into that. All right. So yeah, that just sets things up. It's set in the hegemony of man, hundreds of years in our future. The Technocore is involved. We've got the Farcaster fatline technology, all right? And the hegemony, like all, of mankind's domains, is constantly expanding. And there's different, like, backwater planets that aren't, like, really super connected, right? They don't have Farcaster technology, right? And one of such planets is Hyperion. Hyperion is like one of these backwater planets that doesn't yet have Farcaster technology. But there is something very different about Hyperion. Something very strange and weird, and something that no one really, really understands. And it's been going on for quite some time. At some point on Hyperion, these mysterious objects known as the Time Tombs appeared. And they seem to have been sent backwards in time from some distant point in the future, and nobody knows from where or why. But with the coming of these time tombs, as they're called, comes this devastating being of, like, immense power. We don't really understand how powerful it is, called the Shrike. And the Shrike is a being that invokes awe and terror in people, and a lot of people, like, have attached religious connotations to the Shrike, but we'll get into that eventually. Now, people from time to time will take pilgrimages to the Time Tombs and to the Shrike. It's called the Shrike Pilgrimage. And these pilgrimages are facilitated by the Church of the Final Atonement. And that's how we get to the main storyline in Hyperion, right? And you can kind of look at this first book as like a science fiction Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, like from like the 14th century. So you got like 7 pilgrims on a journey together, and they're each telling their stories. And each one of their stories relates to Hyperion and the Shrike some way. They are each doing this pilgrimage for a different reason. And as the book goes on, they each convey their tales, right? And so we got 7 pilgrims. So the first pilgrim is the consul. Yes, we've got pictures. We've got visual aids this time, guys. We've got the consul. We'll get into him more later. So this is the consul. That's our first pilgrim. We've got Brawne, Lamia. We've got Martin Silenus, the poet. We've got Saul Weintraub and his daughter Rachel, the wandering Jew, the scholar. We've got Fedmahn Kassad, the soldier, the butcher of Brescia. We've got Father Lenar Hoyt, the tortured priest. And we've got the monk Het Mustine. Those are our 7 pilgrims that are each taking this pilgrimage on the backwater world of Hyperion to find the Shrike, because, legend has it, the Shrike will grant a wish to one of these pilgrims. But the rest are doomed. And they've all gone with this understanding that this is the reality of it, that this is the situation. In all likelihood, the Shrike will just kill all of them for all they know. All right. So those are our 7 pilgrims. So let's start from the beginning. So these 7 pilgrims head to Hyperion aboard this tree ship called the Yggdrasil, obviously a reference to Norse mythology. They start in this system called the Pavarotti system, right? So the Yggdrasil is like a biological spaceship. It's like literally a tree ship, and there are all these like space monks that run it. So like I said, they have faster than light travel, but relativity is a thing, and so like people have to be put to sleep to travel, and it's like a whole thing. So they awaken before arriving on Hyperion, and they assemble for dinner. And the first story that is conveyed to us is the story of Father Lenar Hoyt. And it is a very, very, very interesting story. I've actually done an entire video on it on my YouTube channel already. And it's super creepy, and it sets up the horror of the Shrike and all of it. And it's very interesting. So I've got some notes about Father Hoyt story that we're going to talk about. All right. So like I said, he's the first of the 7 pilgrims to share his story, why he's doing this, why he's returning to Hyperion to go on this Shrike pilgrimage, right? And also, I feel like it opens up with the story because it wants to point out this story has religious connotations. There's religious significance to the story. But the story mainly does not revolve around Hoyt himself, but instead his mentor, Father Dore, who he had known since he was a child, right? So Father Dore is banished to the world of Hyperion because he falsified evidence that would indicate that Christianity was older than people previously thought. He falsified evidence, so the church just basically sent him away to Hyperion. And while he's on Hyperion, he's intent on studying this strange race of people that we don't really know that much about, called the Bakura. And the Bakura are very, very, very strange and interesting, and I've gone over this story in its entirety, like I said in that video. So, about 80 days or so into his journey, Father Dore awakes to find that his guide, who's been guiding him through the world of Hyperion, has had his throat slit in the night. Now, why wasn't Dore killed? He has no idea. Why would they come in, slit his companion's, his guide's throat, and leave him? It doesn't make any sense. A few days pass, and he eventually encounters members of the Bakura. They are like these short little people, very, very simple-minded, and they basically live there, and they do what they do. And essentially, it seems like they get rid of anyone that is not of the cruciform. And they keep saying to him, "You are of the cruciform." He says, "Why did you kill my friend?" And they simply say, "To make him die." And "Why didn't you kill me?" "You are of the cruciform. You are of the cruciform." He eventually understands that each of the Bakura have a little marking on their chest. And I'll go to that for a second. Like right there. It's in the shape of a cross. Him being a priest, he wears a crucifix around his neck, a cross. The Bakura have mistaken this for the cruciform. Now, what is the cruciform? We'll get to that. Because the Bakura eventually find out that he is not, in fact, of the cruciform. They figure out eventually that this is just a necklace. This is not a cruciform. You are not of the cruciform. So he fears for his own death. But don't worry, they don't kill Father Dore. His fate is actually a lot worse than simply dying. So I should mention here another bit of the lore of Hyperion, of the Hyperion universe. One of the cool things, and we'll get into this later, is that the hegemony has gone to thousands of planets at this point, and thousands of planets at this point. Some of them have been habitable. Some of them have not been habitable. But 9 of these planets are considered to be labyrinthine worlds. Now, these labyrinthine worlds are all Earth-like. They're all like next to an Earth-like star. The only difference is they're tectonically dead. The plates on these planets don't move. They're tectonically dead. And they need to be. Because below the surface of each of these worlds is a giant tunnel system. A labyrinth constructed by some ancient, long-dead race that has left no trace of themselves. Out of these 8,000 worlds, 9 of them are labyrinthine worlds. 9 of them have left no trace. They have no idea how they constructed them. They have no idea where these builders went. They have no idea why the labyrinths were constructed. Hyperion is one of the 9 labyrinthine worlds. All right. So the Bakura do spare Father Dore, right? And they take him into the labyrinths of Hyperion. And there he finds an ancient cruciform in the Hyperion labyrinth, right? So being a priest, being a true believer, initially he believes this to be evidence of Christianity. There is a cross in the labyrinths of Hyperion, 750,000 years old. He thinks that this is evidence of Christianity. But he would be wrong. He doesn't understand. It's actually far more dark. But before he realizes that, the Bakura are able to make him a part of the cruciform. So essentially, they're going to make him one of them. And within these labyrinths, Father Duray comes face to face with the Shrike. And by the Bakura, he is infected with the cruciform. A parasite. A cross-shaped parasite. Alright. And so, over the time of the story, his sanity basically unravels more and more and more. Especially when he comes to terms with what the Bakura actually are. And what this cruciform parasite is actually doing to them. Right? So the Bakura were once just normal people. They crash-landed on Hyperion. They encountered the cruciform, and it did something to them. It gave them eternal life. Eternal life, but not without a cost. This is a parasite, some kind of parasite that constantly perpetuates itself by keeping its host alive indefinitely, constantly. It does not let them die. But because they had been there so long, and because these Bakura had died again and again and been resurrected by the cruciform again and again and again and again, they had degraded mentally. They had degraded genetically and become more simple, shorter, stunted. That's why they had the appearance that they did. That's why they had like the lowered intelligence. That's why they weren't like normal people, because they had been degraded by the cruciform, bringing them alive over and over and over and over again, rebuilding their dead corpses over and over and over and over again. And realizing this, Duray comes to the understanding, I am of the cruciform now. It is a part of me. The fate of the Bakura is my fate, and he understands that the fate of the Bakura is his fate, and how horrible that is. And I too want to draw the parallel here too. The whole thing with Christianity is that you believe, you give yourself over to Christ, and you will receive eternal life. Well, in this twisted way, Father Duray has received eternal life, but not in a way that he wants. So Father Duray attempts to leave the cleft, and beyond the cleft is like this flame forest. It's like this forest of like plants that like flame up and stuff like that. So he attempts to leave. And as he's leaving, he feels immense pain. The further and further he gets away from the cleft, from where the Bakura are, the more pain he feels. And it's like the most intense pain that he's ever felt. He can't leave. He cannot leave the cleft. So he is trapped there, doomed to live forever with the Bakura. So finally, he absolutely cannot take it. He absolutely cannot take it. And he goes into the flame forest. He endures the pain. He climbs up into one of the flame trees, and he allows himself to just be engulfed by the flames. He's attempting to commit suicide by allowing the fires of the flame forest to just basically consume him, right? And he's up there for 8 years. He's up there for 8 years until he is eventually discovered by one of our protagonists, Father Duray, as you see on the screen right here. Father Duray uncovers him there, attached to the tree, crucified, dying, being burned alive, living, dying, being burned alive, living, dying, being burned alive, living, over and over and over and over and over and over again. The cruciform will not let him go. The cruciform will not let him leave. It sapped out like whatever bit of nutrients that it could from the tree to keep it going over and over again. This parasite will not let him die. until Hoyt comes, and it has a new host, a fresh host. Father Hoyt becomes infected by the cruciform, and Duray crumbles away and is finally allowed to die. And of course, Hoyt eventually leaves Hyperion, but he has to take, like ultra morphine to like keep the pain down. But even then, it's like destroying his life, and he's still in so much pain. So he has to go back. He has to go back to Hyperion, and that is Father Hoyt's tale. And he, like I said, is the first to relay his tale. All right, so that is a heck of an intro. That is a heck of an intro to the book, and that's like basically the first tale that you encounter. And I really, 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 really love that one. And that was the one that really grabbed me and just made me like, oh my god, I have to read this entire freaking series. So like I said, each one of their stories has something to do with Hyperion, has something to do with the Shrike. And the Shrike is tied to this parasite called the cruciform, among other things. All right, so that is the story of Father Duray, and that is why Hoyt is coming to Hyperion. All right. Okay. Okay. So where should I go next? So they begin their pilgrimage on the world of Hyperion. They spend time on like the Hooghly River and like the Sea of Grass. And as time goes on, each one of them conveys their story, right? So the next story I'm going to talk about is the story of Saul Weintraub, right? Saul Weintraub, the wandering scholar. Why is he on Hyperion with a baby, no less? Why is he brought his baby daughter to the world of Hyperion to venture on the Shrike pilgrimage, where most of them are likely gonna die? All right? I'll explain to you exactly why. Pulling up my notes. Okay. You see, Saul Weintraub's daughter, Rachel, has a very, very peculiar disease. A disease that she, in fact, contracted on Hyperion. So like I mentioned earlier, on the world of Hyperion are the time tombs, which were seemingly sent backwards in time from some distant period in the future. And along with these time tombs came the Shrike. The Shrike is tied to these time tombs in an intricate way that is not yet revealed, but is tied to them. So baby Rachel was actually on the world of Hyperion, studying the time tombs. Now, how does that make sense? A baby can't study the time tombs. It's because she wasn't a baby at the time. She was an adult woman on the world of Hyperion, there to study the time tombs. And there, she encountered the Shrike. And because of her encounter, after her encounter, she develops this disease that causes her to age backwards in time. And nobody has any idea why it's happening. But she is aging backwards in time. And he's there because he has no other choice. And I have an awesome quote that I pulled out from the book about why Saul Weintraub came to Hyperion, because essentially he keeps having all of these dreams about Rachel, about Hyperion, and once she becomes sick, and also his wife ends up dying tragically. Once his wife dies, and once he feels like he has another choice, he decides to do what these dreams are telling him to do, because they're telling him to do something very specific. All right, and this is the passage that I have here. And he had walked on through darkness, the red orbs glowing now like bloody moans hanging above an indistinct plain, And when he stopped to rest, the immense voice said, "Saul, take your daughter, your only daughter Rachel, whom you love. Go to the world called Hyperion, and offer her there as a burnt offering at one of the places of which I shall tell you." And Saul had shrugged off the weight of the voice, and had said distinctly into the darkness, "I heard you the first time." The answer is still no. Saul knew he was dreaming, and part of his mind enjoyed the irony of the script, but another part only wanted to waken. Instead, he found himself on a low balcony looking down on a room where Rachel lay naked on a broad block of stone. The scene was illuminated by the glow of the twin red orbs. Saul looked down at his right hand and found a long curved knife there. The blade and handle appeared to be made of bone, the voice sounding more than ever to Saul like some cut-rate Holly director shallow idea of what God's voice should sound like came again. "Saul, you must listen well. The future of humankind depends upon your obedience in this matter. You must take your daughter Rachel, who you love, and go to the world called Hyperion, and offer her there as a burnt offering at one of the places of which I shall tell you." And Saul, sick of the whole dream yet somehow alarmed by it, had turned and thrown the knife far into the darkness. And when he turned back to find his daughter, the scene had faded, the red orbs hung closer than ever, and now Saul could see that they were multifaceted gems the size of small worlds. Amplified voice came again. "So, you have had your chance, Saul Weintraub. If you change your mind, you know where to find me." And Saul awakened, half laughing, half chilled by the dream. So, very, 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 very ominous dream of this voice coming from the darkness saying, "You will go to Hyperion. You will offer up your daughter as an offering at one of the places in which I have chosen." Right? So, over the course of all this, like his daughter's illness, these dreams, his wife's death, and by the way, his wife also begins to have these dreams as well. And she's like, "Oh, we should just in fact, his wife is like, we should just sacrifice ourselves. Let's not sacrifice our daughter, just sacrifice ourselves." But like I said, she eventually dies. And over the course of all this, Saul, who was once a man of faith, begins to lose his faith and begins to lose any allegiance to the deity that he once worshipped. Because he specifically says that any deity that prioritizes obedience over decency is evil, right? So he kind of loses faith in his religion. And after his wife dies, he's kind of left with no choice but to take Rachel on the Shrike pilgrimage, because he's basically seeking some form of salvation after, his own religion basically in his mind failed to save his family. So his story essentially reflects the tragic, intersection of faith and science and personal loss, right? So that is the core of why he decides to go on this pilgrimage, because he's looking for something. He's basically lost everything. He doesn't know what to do next, and this voice in his dream is telling him to go to Hyperion to give up his daughter. And he's done everything else he can. He's prayed to his own God so many times, and nothing has worked. Obviously, as well, this story has direct parallels to the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac, of course, where God commands Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, right? And so Abraham eventually decides that he's going to do it. He takes his son up to the altar. He's about to do it, and then God's like, "No, don't do it." So obviously, Saul Weintraub's story is directly paralleling the story of Abraham and Isaac. So right here again, you'll see the religious themes, the religious connections throughout this entire story are very, very prominent in basically every story, in just about every part of this. the religious themes are very, 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 very prominent. So that is the story of Saul Weintraub. That is why he has agreed to go on this pilgrimage. That is why he is bringing his daughter on the Shrike pilgrimage. Because she is aging backwards. And, we've seen, I'm serious, I don't know, what happens when she gets to age 0. It's like reverse death, so she's gonna die anyway. This is his only option at all. All right. So I think this is really, really interesting. Oh my god, 666 people watching. 666 people watching. If you're enjoying the stream so far, please click the like button. And also, like I said, my campaign for my graphic novel, The Lie Behind the Star, 2 weeks to go. Click the link in the description to check it out. Here's an example of what the hardcovers look like. We've got those wraparound covers. If you're interested in supporting the channel by supporting the graphic novel, click the link in the description. 2 more weeks to go before the campaign ends. All right. So we're going to move on to our next character. Let me see exactly who we're going to cover in detail next. So I really enjoy the character Martin Silenus, the poet, but we're not going to cover his story in detail on this stream. I think we'll have to do like a whole other stream on Martin Silenus and Sad King Billy. I think it's that one deserves like more of its own like focus. So we're not going to totally dive into him yet. Although I really like Martin Silenus. I think Martin Silenus is a character that other people don't like, but I feel like he's one of those guys that's like, he says the truth even if he's like even if he's being a jerk about it, you know what I mean? So Martin Silenus is really awesome because I'll pull him up actually while I'm talking about him at least. He's cool because this guy was actually born on Earth. And the weird thing about that is that Earth has been destroyed for a very long time now. And I say destroyed in quotes because there definitely is more to that. But ostensibly, through an experiment gone wrong, humanity like destroyed Earth. And he was one of the last generations of people to live on Earth. And he's actually very old. He's had a bunch of plastic surgery. But he's a poet. And he's been through a lot. And he's super witty. And I think it's just one of hugely interesting character. But we won't dive too much into him just yet. All right. And there's also the consul, the hegemony consul. We won't dive too much into the consul just yet until more towards the end of the stream, because there's some reveals dealing with the consul later in the stream. So he is one of the pilgrims, and we will get into why he's doing what he's doing later. But for right now, let's talk about Fedmahn Kassad, the soldier. Another really, really interesting character, and one of the 7 pilgrims, right? So he's essentially depicted in this series as just like a very, very skilled soldier, but also extremely violent, but also like extremely pious and like dedicated to his like code of ethics, right? So he's committed to like this new Bushido code, right? So Bushido is like a code of conduct that like emerged in Japan, like during like the samurai era or like the Japanese warriors, right? And these types of ideals basically spread across their society. So they drew inspiration from like Confucianism, which is like relatively conservative of a philosophy. And it's a system of belief that places a great deal of importance on loyalty and duty. So he's totally into like this new Bushido code, and he's also a super pious, like in like the Islamic religion, because like of course all the old religions survive. Like Catholicism is a part of the series, like Islam is a part of the series. Like religion does not go away in a few hundred years. So he's super pious, but also like a super skilled and dedicated military soldier, and just he gets stuff done. I think like the highlight of Kassad's story is a part where he has to intervene in this conflict between the Shiites and the Sunnis, right? and it really showcases like his like honor and like his religious beliefs, right? So he is. Well, before I even get to that, the big part about Kassad's story, right? When we're first introduced to Kassad, he's in a training simulation, right? And within this simulation, he encounters this woman that appears out of nowhere called Moneta. And Moneta appears several times throughout Kassad's story, and he doesn't know where she's coming from, where she's from, or anything. But she appears to have this very advanced, futuristic technology. Who is this Moneta woman? How is she appearing to him in this simulation, and how is she appearing to him like all the time, right? So fast forwarding again, when he's dealing with this conflict between the Shiites and the Sunnis, right? He is tasked with getting rid of this like problematic prophet on this planet called Quam. I think it's like Quam Rida or something like that. So there's this planet called Quam Rida, problematic prophet. He's got to get rid of him, but he can't do nuclear warfare because like he is like committed to the idea that like his God would never condone like the slaughter of innocents. So like he really believes that his God would never condone the slaughter of innocents. So he's not going to use like nuclear weapons to, get rid of this prophet. And instead, he resorts to the assassination of this prophet, right? And so that I think is like a big part of people are saying it's pronounced Kamrada. Yeah. That is a big part of the story. In that is a big part of the narrative that reflects the nature of Kassad and like how he really is a true believer when it comes to like his beliefs. He's a true believer. So his story basically follows him like through battles as he like rises up in the ranks of the military, and he ultimately enters into a huge conflict with the ousters on this planet called Brescia. He becomes known actually as the Butcher of Brescia because like he's super brutal. And as I said before, like the ousters constantly get into conflicts with the hegemony because the ousters are like outside of hegemony control, and the hegemony is like always trying to bring them to heel. And also, like I said, there's other forces that stoke these conflicts between like the hegemony and the ousters. So he's involved in this huge battle, this huge conflict, and he ends up injured, and his ship gets shot down, right? And here comes Moneta again. Moneta is here again. And she's nursing him back to health, but she's also preparing him for battle. And she's telling him, you gotta like annihilate these ousters. Like she wants it. She wants him to destroy the ousters, right? So in the ensuing conflict, Kassad, gives into Moneta's manipulation. Like whoever this strange futuristic woman is, he gives into it. And he forsakes his honor for the sake of revenge, But so he defeats the ousters, and he engages in another romantic encounter with Moneta because they're always like hooking up. But in this romantic encounter, something very, 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 very odd and disturbing happens, right? And I'm not gonna read the passage where this happened because it's a little graphic. But it's very, very interesting. Like in this moment of just like intense pleasure, Moneta becomes the Shrike. She transforms into the Shrike, this being of terror made out of this like spiky metal, the being of ultimate horror. She turns into the Shrike, right? And like he freaks out. He's like, "What's going on?" And yeah, so Moneta turns into the Shrike. So this incident is basically a huge wake-up call to Kassad. And he comes to term with what he's done, and he realizes like he's addicted to violence. He realizes he's addicted to violence. And like although he like has it in his mind that he's like serving God and he's like he's doing the right thing most of the time, he is in fact addicted to violence. And he realizes the danger of being addicted to violence. So despite like being basically like a worshiper of warfare previously, he basically becomes anti-war, and he briefly engages in anti-war movements. But the focus of his rage and his vengeance becomes focused squarely on the Shrike. And he is focused and determined that he will meet the Shrike again. He will encounter the Shrike again, and he's determined that he will kill the Shrike. He's determined. He's like, I'm going to kill the Shrike when I see you again, you mother freaker. I'm going to freaking kill you, right? So that's why he's going to Hyperion. Like I said, everybody's got a different reason for why they're going to Hyperion, why they're going on the Shrike pilgrimage. Kassad feels like he was manipulated by this weird creature that he doesn't understand, and he wants to freaking kill it. And there's more about the Shrike and Moneta that we will get into later. That's very interesting. There's more mysteries yet to be unveiled here. Thank you so much for your super chat, Colorado Hyperion. You've got the name. Yeah. Thanks for your super chat. Oh no, my books fell. See, I've got the paperbacks. You know, hardcovers of Hyperion are actually very difficult to find, and I really wish we had a nice set of hardcovers for all four. You know, that'd be really awesome. Folio Society, looking at you. You guys should totally do it. But yeah. That's the deal with Kassad. That's why he's coming to Hyperion. So, if you are enjoying the stream so far... Dang it, those are going to keep falling. So, if you are enjoying the stream so far... please hit the like button. It really helps out the stream and the channel and everything. And also check out the link in the description that has the link to my Indiegogo campaign for my new graphic novel. If you want to get a copy of that before everybody else does, you can click the link in the description. And we've got various tiers. Ebook, audiobook, hardcover, paperback, all of that's there. Check it out. It's a science fiction graphic novel. And we've already got like 800 backers almost. We've done like really good. So you guys check that out. And yeah, so that's the story of Kassad. And the Kassad is an awesome dude. He's super badass. And he has a great like journey and evolution as the story goes on. So that's super exciting. So who do we talk about next? Hetma we're going to save for another video too. We're not going to get into everybody. We're just going to talk about the... I think I've gone over the main people I want to talk about right now. Okay, the next person we're going to talk about briefly, because certain aspects of our story are very important. So I mentioned that in this universe, the Technocore is adjacent to the hegemony, and they're not under hegemony dominion or anything like that. They're adjacent, and they kind of do what they want. They have the ability to create what are called cybrids, which are like clones of human intelligences, right? And one of these cybrids that they've created is a cybrid of John Keats. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, the real world John Keats wrote a poem called Hyperion, and he wrote another poem called The Fall of Hyperion, which was never finished. So in this story, John Keats appears as a cybrid, and we're introduced to him in Brawne Lamia's story. All right. So Brawne Lamia is the only female pilgrim, right? And she hails from a world called Lussus. And Lussus is interesting because it's a high gravity world, right? So because it's a high gravity world, people are generally shorter and more muscular. So she's like she's shorter, but she's like super muscular and strong, but she's also like pretty. She's like beautiful, but she's like super muscular and strong, right? And she's kind of like that tough chick archetype, I guess. She rejects religious affiliations, and she kind of harbors a lot of distrust against like the hegemony, and that's rooted in the fact that like her father's suicide. But we'll get into that like at another time. We don't need to get into all that. She also doesn't like Martin Silenus. Like she really, really hates Martin Silenus because he just like says what he's thinking. So like throughout the book, it's like really interesting to like see her like and Martin Silenus kind of have that like interesting conflict, right? So her like story is very like noir, right? It's kind of like this sci-fi detective story. It almost feels like a Philip K. Dick-esque type of tale, right? And in this story, she becomes connected with the cybrid John Keats, and they have this love affair, and she ends up becoming pregnant with his child, which is a really weird thing because like a cyber human baby, like what's up with that? So she becomes pregnant with the child of John Keats. So that's what you need to know about Brawne Lamia, is that she's on this pilgrimage, she is pregnant, and yeah, she's pregnant by John Keats. We won't get into like exactly what's going on with her until a little bit later. So just remember Brawne Lamia, remember the fact that she's pregnant. All right. Okay. So where do we go next before we get into the other thing that I have here? Okay. So okay. So let's talk about the traitor. Let's talk about the traitor. So like I said, Dan Simmons, I think, took a lot of inspiration from Dune. And the beginning of this book, we are alerted to the fact that there is, in fact, a traitor among the pilgrims. One of these pilgrims is a traitor. And I'm just going to tell you who the traitor is right now. The traitor is, in fact, the consul. The consul is a traitor of the hegemony. And why is he being a traitor? Why is he being a traitor? But before I get into that, one thing you got to understand. Actually, I'll get into that in a second. We got a lot to cover. Right? So he is a traitor. Right, and in the opening of prologue, he's talking to Maina Gladstone, the CEO of the hegemony. And she says that a traitor exists among the Shrike pilgrims on their journey to Hyperion, but we don't really know who it is. And it's later revealed to be the consul, right? So he seemingly has this like kind and gentle demeanor, but he is betraying everybody, and he is potentially trying to start a major conflict, a major intergalactic war with the Ousters. And this is something that would potentially alter the course of all of humanity. And he is essentially motivated by this huge resentment towards the hegemony for the destruction of his grandparents' like peaceful home world. They had this peaceful planet where they had these like awesome dolphins, and they were like communicating with. It's a really cool chapter, but it was called the Maui Covenant, right? And he's really really angry at the hegemony for the destruction of like this world, right? And also this I feel like this chapter has like a lot of themes of like, you know, environmental destruction, because he's like super. His grievances, I feel like, are in large part fueled by like environmental degradation. Like he feels like humanity has like destroyed everything at this point. Like for all everybody knows, like humanity destroyed the world. So ultimately, he is the one that opens up the time tombs, releasing the Shrike upon humanity, right? And he sees this as not only like saving the world, but like the entire universe. He's like totally unapologetic about his actions. Right. So what's interesting about this is that throughout the book, he's like presented as like a source of stability during the Shrike pilgrimage. But like ultimately, he's revealed to be like this far more complex of a figure. Right. And by the end of it, I guess like the other pilgrims, it's not even clear whether like they even fault him for like what he did. Right, because it's like humanity is kind of a problem, and the Shrike is also already associated with the Church of the Final Atonement. Like I said, a lot of like religious connotations became associated with the Shrike. Right, a whole entire like religion formed around this called the Church of the Final Atonement, and basically they believed that the Shrike was sent here to cleanse humanity from everything, to announce the end of humanity. Right, they literally believed that. So that's his deal. He is the traitor, but from his perspective, humanity are the destroyers. You know what I'm saying? We destroyed the earth, like I said. So he is the traitor. But what even are the time tombs? Right? Like what even is the Shrike? Like what is all this, right? Like what is all this? Let's get into it. let's get into it. So I gotta change my slides. So we're gonna remove that slide. What is the Shrike? What are the time tombs? There's a lot of mystery to it, and you definitely have to do a lot of digging to uncover these things. And this is a lot that I've basically uncovered over time. Oh yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, the world of Hyperion is one of the outback worlds. It's not connected by the Farcaster net. It's kind of good maybe that it's not connected, because like would you really want the Farcaster net to be connected to Hyperion, the world where the Shrike inhabits? You know what I mean? So Hyperion is an Earth-like planet, and it contains 3 continents. You've got Equus, you've got Aquila, and you've got Ursus, and it's got a single moon. And the sun of Hyperion was said to like shine brighter than Earth. It's a bit brighter than Earth on Hyperion, though the sun does have a smaller mass that's mentioned. And as I said, Hyperion is one of the 9 labyrinthine worlds, so this is another thing that's very special about Hyperion. But the other 2 things that are astounding about Hyperion, other than it being an Earth-like world and other than it being one of the 9 labyrinthine worlds, is the fact that it is home to the time tombs and the Shrike. And as I said, these tombs seem to be moving backwards in time. They've moved backwards in time. And no one knows why they're there. The Shrike is also called the Lord of Pain by those who worship it, right? And here is a description of the Shrike from the book. It was vaguely man-shaped, but in no way human. It stood at least 3 meters tall, even when it was at rest. The silvered surface of the thing seemed to shift and flow like mercury, suspended in midair. The reddish glow from the crosses set into the tunnel walls reflected from sharp surfaces and glinted on the curved metal blades protruding from the thing's forehead. 4 wrists, oddly jointed elbows, knees, armored back, and thorax. So the Shrike is this human-like creature that's made of like this incredibly sharp, weird metal, and it's deeply associated with the time tombs. So what does it do? What does the Shrike do, right? So in the beginning, when the time tombs first appeared, the Shrike seemed to be restricted to the area where the time tombs were. It was like restricted to that region of Hyperion. But as time went on, it appeared that its region began to expand. Like the domain of the Shrike started to expand. Why is that happening? Right? So, in the religion, in the Church of the Final Atonement, it was believed that the Shrike didn't kill its victims when it encountered them, right? It didn't kill its victims. Instead, it impaled them upon the tree of pain. And that's where it gets its name from, the bird, the Shrike. There are birds called shrikes, and they take their prey and they impale them on spikes. And that is what the Shrike was said to do, impale its victims on the tree of pain. But there's something, and here's a description of the tree of pain, right? Shimmering, mirage-like, a tree of steel thorns appeared out of a haze, and a sudden dust storm of ochre sand. The thing seemed to fill the valley, rising at least 200 meters to the height of the cliffs. Branches shifted, dissolved, and reformed like elements of a poorly tuned hologram. Sunlight danced on 5-meter-long thorns. Corpses of ouster men and women, all naked, were impaled on at least a score of these thorns. Other branches held other bodies. Not all, were human. So what is this tree of pain, and where is it? Because no one knows where it is on Hyperion. Like one of the time tombs is the Shrike temple, but is that where the tree of pain is? Is that where the tree of pain is? One of the big reveals in this series is that the tree of pain doesn't actually exist physically, which makes it even worse. It turns out that all of the Shrike's victims are actually all like hooked up to this weird system inside of the Shrike's temple. They're all plugged into a simulation. They're all plugged into a simulation in which they are impaled upon the tree and experience eternal torment in a simulation. So this isn't a normal experience of time. I want you to understand this. This is not a normal experience of time where it's like 1 second is 1 second. Because it is a simulation, he can extend their pain. He can extend their suffering endlessly. Also, J. Dubsey, this was written in 1989. So this is before The Matrix. So actually The Matrix is a shitty Hyperion, if anything. So sorry to bust your bubble. This is older than The Matrix. But yeah, they are constantly being tortured for an eternity. So everyone that the Shrike takes, it puts them on this tree of pain. But why? Why is it doing this? Why is it doing this? And we'll get to that. So like I said, its motivations are largely mysterious throughout the series, right? But we do eventually learn that they are directly tied to the Technocore. You can trust these guys. Of course you can't. Sentient AI that's adjacent to humanity, that's giving us all this weird technology, of course we can't trust these guys. And we eventually learn that the Shrike is tied directly to the Technocore, it seems. But because I think it seems like so godlike, and due to like the ambiguity of its origins, and due to like just its power, just like the nature of it, the Church of the Final Atonement formed when it first appeared on Hyperion, and I think the Church the Church kind of revered this entity, and they named it the Lord of Pain, because of just like its nature. But most people in the Empire believe that the Church of the Final Atonement is a cult. Like most people aren't taking the Shrike pilgrimage. And the people that are taking the Shrike pilgrimage now aren't taking it because they believe in the Shrike. They're taking it for other reasons, obviously. But anyway, it is the opinion of the Church that, like I said, the Shrike is coming to end humanity. And there's a quote from the book where it says, "The Shrike is the Lord of Pain and the Angel of Final Atonement, come from a place beyond time to announce the end of the human race." All right. So that is the Shrike, right? So what's going on with the time tombs, right? What are the time tombs? What are these objects, right? So I gotta change my slide again. Gonna change my slide. Present. Window. Yeah. So, what are the time tombs? I'm glad you asked. The time tombs are a group of 6 objects that appeared on Hyperion at some point that were sent backward from the future. Nobody knows where they came from at first, and then only some of them ever get explained, and I don't think anything is fully explained, but it's all like left up for interpretation. But I can give you the gist of what the deal is with the time tombs. Like I said, there are 6 in total. The first one is the Sphinx, right? And eventually we learn, I'm just going to tell you, eventually we learn that the Sphinx basically serves as, once it opens up, as a time portal leading to the time when the time tombs were initially constructed. The time from whence they were sent backwards, you know what I mean? So, but it's never clear why it lets the people that it lets through. You know what I mean? Some people can come through, some people can't. Some people are allowed to come through, some people aren't, and it's never really clear why some people are allowed to come through and others aren't, right? The next one is the Jade Tomb, right? So it's like notable for like the emerald green color that it has, right? And the interesting thing about the Jade Tomb is that at the base of the Jade Tomb is the entrance to the labyrinths of Hyperion, right? So, like I said, if you didn't hear earlier, Hyperion is one of the 9 Labyrinthine worlds. And they say that a bunch in the book. It's kind of funny. Did you know that Hyperion is one of the 9 Labyrinthine worlds? Like Dan Simmons keeps bringing your attention back to the fact that Hyperion is one of the 9 Labyrinthine worlds. He keeps bringing your attention back to it, which is really cool. So the exact purpose of the Jade Tomb is also kind of unclear, right? But it seems to, at some point in the books, it does imply that it is somehow related to gas giant worlds, right? And then there are ousters that visit the Jade Tomb, like all the time for whatever reason. And it's never quite clear why the ousters are visiting the Jade Tomb. But it suggests like some kind of connection, right? And then the next tomb is the Crystal Monolith, right? So not very much is known about the Crystal Monolith, really at all. And then we've got the obelisk, which is straightforward. It's an obelisk. And then we, of course, got the cave tombs, which are like these artificial caverns. And then, of course, we have the Shrike Palace, which I talked about earlier. This is the place where the Shrike is taking its victims, right? And hooking them up to the Tree of Pain simulation, right? But before we can tie all of this together, we first have to discuss the Technocore, right? We got to talk about the Technocore a little bit. So keep the Shrike in your mind, keep the Time Tombs in your mind. Let's move on to the Technocore, right? So what's up with the Technocore? Like, what is up with the Technocore, right? So the Technocore, essentially, from everything that I've gathered from this series, they emerged from experiments that were conducted on old Earth, like way back in the day when Earth was still around. So they originated on Earth, because where does AI come from? We make it here on Earth, and then it eventually gets out of hand, right? Also, if you're listening, I know that there's like 700 people watching. Please hit the like button. It really, really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. So they emerged on Earth initially. We created them in their most basic form, right? They were AI entities that we made that gained self-awareness, but they never developed, I would say, any kind of empathy or, like altruism. They essentially evolved by being parasitic, and like parasitizing each other, like each other's code, by essentially eating each other. They evolved by being parasites, right? So that alone, they're just seeing where they came from, you can understand why they operate how they operate. They evolved being parasites, and they continue to be parasites. And I'll explain exactly how. So we learn eventually that the Technocore's ultimate goal was to upload themselves into the void which binds, but then they didn't understand that there was already a race of beings living within the void which binds, called the lions and tigers and bears. But that's too much to talk about here. I'm telling you, this series is so expansive. So they wanted to upload themselves into this space called the void which binds. It's like this in between realm. And the later books really expand on that, like with Aina. And Aina is a character that appears in Endymion and Rise of Endymion. And she's like Space Jesus, essentially. But like I said, it's a little bit too much to get into here. But they wanted to upload themselves from the void which binds, right? So, and this would eliminate their dependence on like matter, right? And also it would eliminate their dependence on humanity, right? Because what they've been doing through Farcaster technology is actually like feeding on like some kind of like brain waves of humanity. Every time a person crosses through a Farcaster, they've been kind of like feeding on the brain waves a little bit. So they've been doing that secretly. And then it is also revealed that the Technocore is actually responsible for the destruction of old Earth. It wasn't humanity destroying old Earth. It was actually the Technocore making the Earth disappear, because it's not actually destroyed. They just moved it. So it was them all along, right? But during the time of the hegemony, they maintained this, like, this seeming peace. They maintain a cooperative, yet, aloof relationship with the hegemony. Like I said, they provided the Farcasters, even though they put like this parasitic like thing into it. And they provided Fat Line and like all sorts of technologies. But and then later, like in Fall of Hyperion, they continue to be a part of like humanity, even though they kind of take a hit by the end of this book, because they end up like going on backups, and they like still involved with humanity, like through the Catholic Church and pacts and stuff like that. Because like I said, the Catholic Church is still around. But anyway, before we get into that, how does this all relate? How does this all relate to the Time Tombs and the Shrike? What does that have to do with anything? All right. So it is suggested in the text, right, that the Shrike seems to have been the final result of something that evolved alongside the Technocore, right? So this is an entity created through like the amalgamation of all sentient artificial intelligence, like, right? It was called initially the Reaper program, and it was designed originally to maintain order, like among the first AIs. That was its purpose, to maintain order. Right, so as like the eons pass and the AI is all like conglomerated into the Technocore, the Reaper program also continuously grew and evolved as well. And eventually it became the Shrike, created the Shrike. This is the current form of the Shrike. So the Shrike acts as the avatar, seemingly, of something, of like this ultimate intelligence. Like this AI god that was created by the Technocore in the distant future, right? And sent backwards in time, right? And the Shrike really has no motive of its own. It's kind of like an avatar of this like crazy, powerful intelligence, right? It seems like, because it's never like straight up said, but that's what the text is implying, in my opinion, right? So it's also heavily implied that the specific reason that the Shrike and the Time Tombs were sent back in time was to seek out the ultimate human intelligence, right? So this would be, okay. So there's the ultimate AI intelligence, like this theoretical entity that could exist. And then there's this ultimate human intelligence, this theoretical entity that could exist, which is like this being of human empathy and human consciousness, the antithesis to this, to the Technocore's ultimate intelligence, right? And the Tree of Pain seems like it was built to maybe draw out the human intelligence so that the Shrike could eliminate the threat before it ever became a threat to its AI equivalent in the future. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So, and the Technocore and their motivations continue to evolve and change, and they go on like this pursuit of transcendence, but like it gets like super timey-wimey and wibbly-wobbly, and the allegiance of the Shrike seemingly shifts and alters and changes, and it's never like totally clear exactly what's happening. There's a lot of like piecing together like things, especially in those later two books. Like you want those later two books to like explain a lot of the mysteries, but they introduce a lot more mysteries, and it's not the easiest to decipher. So yeah, so the Technocore sent the Time Tombs back in time. They sent the Shrike back in time to basically kind of like stop humanity before it like got to basically stop the human intelligence before it became a threat to itself, right? And there's also another significant thing about the Time Tombs, specifically the obelisk, right? And I didn't mention this earlier, right? So at some point in the series, there's a vision that's had by someone where they see the legions of Shrike. There isn't just one Shrike. There is an army of Shrike waiting in the future to be released upon humanity at some point in date in the future. At some point in the future, there might be this army of Shrikes that are waiting to be unleashed. And it seems that the obelisk might contain the gateway to where this army of Shrikes waits to be released upon humanity. Right? So just, there's that detail. All right. So yeah, the Technocore, the Time Tombs, and the Shrike are all tied up together in like this time traveling plot line that spans over multiple centuries and deals with multiple different characters and has all of these intersecting plots, right? So let's get into a major reveal, right? And this all leads into like the later books too, right? So we mentioned Saul Weintraub's daughter, Rachel, and we mentioned that Fedmahn Kassad had encountered this woman named Moneta, right? Who became the Shrike. Who is Moneta? Who is Moneta? How does she have this futuristic tech, right? Because she's from the future. Excuse me, no. She's not from the future. She's actually from the past. Sent to the future. Because Moneta is Rachel. Saul was getting the visions in his mind. Bring your daughter to the Time Tombs. Bring your daughter to the Shrike. And he does that in the end. I wish I had the art. There is a really cool piece of art of him kneeling before the Shrike with the baby. But I don't have that one right now. Yeah. So he brings Rachel to the Shrike. And Rachel grows up to be Moneta, a servant of Aina, which we'll have to do a whole other stream to talk about that, because Aina is a character that appears in the distant future. She's like the Paul Atreides of the Hyperion saga. She's like the Jesus. She's like a space Jesus. And Moneta is a servant of Aina. And then actually later in the books, the Shrike seems to be a servant of Aina. You know, it's like a whole, it like totally turns it on its head, and it gets weird, and it gets more complicated. But yes, Saul Weintraub's daughter is actually Moneta. Moneta, right? So the reason everything seems so weird, and the reason there's all these things that seem predetermined, is because we're dealing with things like people from the future and time travel, and also the void which binds, right? So I mentioned that the Technocore, they wanted to upload themselves into the void which binds so they could be released from like the constraints of being physical at all, and released from like being tied to humanity at all. But the void which binds connects everything. You know what I mean? It's like the Force or something. I don't know. The void which bind connects everything. So dreams that people are having, people appearing from the past and appearing in the future, it's all these people that are moving through this in-between realm, between space-time, the void which binds. And I don't want to get too much into it, but in the later books, the religious themes continue, because like it directly mentions that Jesus was actually real, and that it wasn't magic, but Jesus somehow upon death moved his consciousness into the void which binds. He was a special person like Aina, maybe. And he moved his consciousness into the void which binds. And in the Bible, when Jesus appears before his disciples, like later after his death, it's because on the cross, as he was dying, he projected himself through time, through the void which binds. And like that explains like how like so many people, like how a lot of the weird things that are happening in the series, like people are moving through the void which binds. There's timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. It gets super weird. But yeah, that's the gist of it. And this obviously isn't everything. Like I said, we mainly talked about the first two books, but like that is the Hyperion Cantos, and it's like one of my freaking favorites. Like, and like I said, we'll have to do like an entire other stream getting more into more of the characters, because I think Maina Gladstone is an interesting character, and like I said, I really want to talk about Martin Silenus and Sad King Billy and his encounter with the Shrike, because that's really interesting. And I also want to get more into Aegina and Endymion and Rise of Endymion. Like Endymion is just a place on Hyperion, so it's still dealing with Hyperion, but it's like a specific place. So yeah, what did you guys think about that? Oh, talk about the lions and tigers and bears. Well, the lions and tigers and bears were the entities that already lived in the void which binds. That was the reason the Technocore like had trouble like doing anything with the void which binds, because like there was already these beings that lived there, and we don't know like a super lot about them, but I did talk about them a little bit in one of my Hyperion videos. So let me know, how have I been doing with this stream? Do you guys feel lost? Those of you that haven't read it, that have been listening along, do you guys feel lost? Have I been doing a good job at explaining things? Thank you so much for your super chat. Platinum Pig, they say, could you do a show interpreting Yung Tianming's fairy tale, Shangxin and Death Sin? That's definitely planned. People saying this is fantastic. They love it. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Because I did really try to like get all my thoughts gathered together so I wouldn't like... Hyperion is a lot. It's a lot to explain Hyperion. There's a lot going on in Hyperion. A lot of moving parts, lots of moving pieces. It is truly a sci-fi like epic. It's truly a sci-fi epic. And I'm definitely going to do more streams, not just on Hyperion, but just like going through like, just doing like these deep dives on these books that I love, right? Because Hyperion is one of those ones that I feel like people know about Hyperion, but it doesn't really get the credit that it deserves. I feel like how influential it is. Because like I said, someone else was just saying earlier, like, oh, this sounds like The Matrix. And I'm like, this is before The Matrix. So maybe The Matrix sounds a little bit like this. So yeah, Hyperion is sick. I think I stopped scrolling through the art. Yeah, here's some art, more art of the time tombs. Yeah, so the time tombs are really cool. I honestly think Villeneuve would do a great Hyperion thing, but I feel like that's not happening after Dune. I think Hyperion is too similar to Dune in too many ways for Villeneuve to do that as well. You know what I mean? But Hyperion, from what I heard, the rights did get sold. So there is like some kind of Hyperion adaptation happening in the future. So are there any other things or questions about the series that I didn't cover here that you guys have for me? I don't want to like go too in depth in anything else. And I hope I like did the gist of explaining everything that I set out to explain. Yeah, we covered the characters, we covered the Technocore, the Labyrinthine worlds. Yeah, I think we did what I set out to do. Someone says Hyperion Cantos is in my top 10 sci-fi books. That's mine too, honestly. It's absolutely great. Absolutely great. And please, if you're watching right now, please hit the like button. Please do hit the like button. We will keep streaming for a while now and just generally talk about Hyperion, or just if you guys have some questions about other sci-fi, or if you have recommendations about books that you want me to read, that'd be great. And also, please check out the graphic novel, link in the description. It is my very own project that I and my dear friend Matthew Weldon have been working on for the past year and a half. It is like our epic sci-fi space adventure story that's like full of biological technology and, you know, cosmic horror and mystery. We worked really hard to get this out, so please check it out if you're interested at all. Yeah, and it is a graphic novel. It's like full color, every page. This is the large size hardcover. So please check that out. Someone said Ringworld. I have done a small video on Ringworld, but I have not super dived into Ringworld, but I definitely should. But there is an episode of the podcast Cosmic Chronicles where we talk about Ringworld and we dive into just megastructures in general, because Larry Niven was obviously obsessed with megastructures. He was really into the concept. And he basically compiled like essays about megastructures where he like listed classifications of megastructures. Yeah. So yeah, we talked a lot about Hyperion. I don't want to like spoil everything that happens in Endymion and Rise of Endymion. We will leave that for another live stream. Um, so yeah, yeah, Hyperion. Let's go. J Star, you might have to rewind a little bit because we've already like gone through like the entire story. Basically, we've already broken everything down. So now we're kind of in the chatting with the audience, unwinding phase of the live stream, the chill part of the live stream, where I feel like I've gotten through all of my notes and I've talked about everything that I set out to talk about. Quinn, do Ender's Game or Starship Troopers? I do Ender's Game. I do Ender's Game for sure. Starship Troopers has never been my favorite, but Ender's Game for sure. That one, it's been talked about a bunch, but definitely a lot of really interesting concepts in Ender's Game. Someone says Hell's Gate. I have not checked out Hell's Gate. But what is it about? Book of the New Sun. Oh yeah, Book of the New Sun, by Gene Wolfe. I have the Folio Society editions of Book of the New Sun, and that one's great. That is definitely we might be able to. That might be one that we could dive into on a stream. But I would probably want to do like a main YouTube video on that one that was like really well produced and edited, because I think Book of the New Sun deserves that kind of attention. But then maybe do like a produced video and then go in later and do a live stream that where we dive into like more nuances of it all, because the Book of the New Sun is extremely odd and bizarre, and it's like got this weird fantasy vibe, even though it's not fantasy. It's actually science fiction that's set like a million years in the future, and there's something wrong with the sun. And what I really like about it is that the main character of the Book of the New Sun, Severian, is very naive about the world. He's very much an unreliable narrator. Like when he's describing things, he doesn't know what he's describing. So because he doesn't know what he's describing, you don't know what he's describing, and it definitely forces you to be very like to pay attention and to like kind of decipher everything that's happening. And I feel like everyone that I've ever talked to that's read it has said to me that you have to read it more than once before you get the details, and that's definitely true. You have to kind of read it over and over again. Like whereas Hyperion is like very complex, but I think Hyperion is very, you can get into Hyperion very like you can get into it. It's written in a way that like it's approachable. Whereas Book of the New Sun, I think, is not very approachable. It's written in a style that I think a lot of people would be like, oh, this is kind of overwhelming, and it would kind of, I think it's written in a style that would turn some people off. But I love it, and I feel like if I haven't seen like a really good video or like any kind of really good like video on YouTube that's dived into it, so perhaps I could be the first, and that'd be really cool. Thank you, Carries, for becoming a member of the channel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all for being here and listening to me talk about Hyperion, and I really hope I did a good job with my Hyperion talk. Um, um, okay. Someone says, did the Technocore create the cruciform? I think that is implied to some degree that they did, because it's definitely correct. It's definitely connected to the Shrike, and it's definitely something that's not native to Hyperion. I don't believe it's native to Hyperion. And it seems like the Labyrinthine worlds are somehow tied maybe to the Technocore in some way too. That's the thing, when you get to like time traveling stuff, anything becomes kind of possible. But there's definitely like all sorts of hints like laid out throughout the entire thing. And Hyperion is definitely one of those things. It's one of those series. There's so many series like this that I love, where when you dive back into it and you like reread it, all of these like awesome like little details come to the forefront, and all of these little things that you missed at first like come to the forefront. And I think Hyperion is really rewarding to read again. But no book is more rewarding to read again than Book of the New Sun, though. Oh, someone says Off Armageddon Reef is another good sci-fi book. Yes, that is the first in a long series of sci-fi books. They start off as sci-fi books, but then they become more it's fantasy sci-fi, because it's like because of an alien race, humanity is forced to basically hide and like become like feudal again. And they end up on this world called Safehold, where they're hiding from this alien race, and maybe one day they're going to come back into outer space and deal with this alien race. But after like I've read a lot of them, and after like 10 books, they're still not back in outer space dealing with these alien races. Like 10 books in, like right, they're still dealing with what's going on Safehold. So I feel like it's more of a the Gababa. Yeah, that's the name of the alien race. But I feel like it's so it feels more a fantasy for sure. And let me, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jackie C, you're always in the chat, so I hope you don't mind. I just made you a moderator. I've got to remember to do that because there are certain people in here that I see all the time that I'm like, I should make them a moderator, but I always forget. I always forget. AK, you're already a moderator. Car Snark is a moderator. Okay, excellent, excellent, excellent. And James is in here too. James is a moderator already. So I'm going to fix James's moderation status. Add as moderator. Okay, now James, you are now my main moderator because now James. Okay, now James, you have the managing moderator powers. You got the powers. You got the power. Yeah, yeah. Well, Raw and Demian, please. I'm not gonna ban you. I'm not gonna ban you. I think you're fine as long as you don't post any spoilers in the chat. Raw really wants some attention, so I will say Brawne has a very cool name. He's named after a character that appears in Endymion and the later two books. He's named after a character. So there you go. So heads up. Just got here what I miss. Oh, unfortunately, the whole thing. So you might have to rewind to get the whole thing because we went through the entire story basically of the first two books as best as I could. And we had images and visual aids, and I think it was a really nice stream in general. Revelation Space, been there, done that. There's even videos of that on my channel. Revelation Space is great. Yes, 90 minutes to watch. You got a lot. Yes, feel free to rewind and watch it from the beginning. Hey Quinn, promise us you will never take down your videos, and if YouTube takes them down, you will re-upload them. I will try. I try to back up my videos as much as I can. I do try to do that just in case like something crazy happens with the videos, and yeah. Just in case something crazy happens with the videos. But I hope that never happens because that would be a huge pain. Definitely be a huge pain. Someone says Hainish Cycle. So that's Ursula K. Le Guin. Yeah. So that's Left Hand of Darkness, Dispossessed. I actually have like I have like a really nice copy of both the Left Hand of Darkness and the Dispossessed. I'll actually get it for you and show it to you because it's really nice. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get my copy and show you guys these copies because Dispossessed, Left Hand of Darkness, great political science fiction classic books. Some of them might think of them as a little slow because they're not like action based or anything. They're more like, you know, she's trying to make a point with those books. But I'll get those. I hear you call my name, and it feels like home. When you call my name, it's like a little prayer. Down on my knees, I wanna take you there. Midnight hour, feel your power, it's like a prayer. Okay, so here are my awesome folio copy versions of these books. So this one Let me put myself on full screen so you guys can see this. The Left Hand of Darkness. And these, I might as well show you these off, because these were a wonderful gift from Folio Society. And they make beautifully bound books. And a lot of them are illustrated, and this is an illustrated one. And they're just, the quality of these books is just bound so well. So that's Left Hand of Darkness. So that's, oh no! I'm always like trying to balance something and it collapses. Okay, so that's Left Hand of Darkness. And then this one is The Dispossessed. So that's a really other beautiful edition from Folio Society. So I really appreciate them for sending me these. But they really should send me that Dune Messiah, Folio Society. You really should send me that Dune Messiah. That's the one I want. Someone says, so many books falling. Yeah, it's not really a Quinn day if books aren't falling. Someone says, what's that book on the stand? This is... a giant book of spells that I really love. It is actually a like full-size, like perfect replica of like the Book of Shadows from that TV show Charmed. And I've always like super been obsessed with that book since I was a kid, and I've always wanted it. So like now I have it. Now I got this like super freaking awesome copy, and it's got like all the stuff in it. It's got like everything. I freaking love it. Kind of use it as a prop in my videos, like whenever I'm like the Necronomicon or something. Yeah, because it reminds me of the it can pass for my Necronomicon or like my Book of Shadows. I think it's freaking awesome. Really, really, I feel like the book was like the best thing about that show, right? That book is freaking sick. Someone says, oh, I think I saw that in The Craft. I don't know, maybe the newer Craft. I don't know. The Craft is, I think, pre-Charmed. Definitely like a influence for Charmed for sure. So yeah, that's what that is. And like I said, anybody that's watching right now, please, please, please do me a favor and check out the link in the description. Check out my new graphic novel. The campaign is running for less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks left. Please, please check it out if you want to support the channel and support the campaign. Someone says, missing some skin, I think. I don't think... Does the Necronomicon in Lovecraft's work, right? Does it say that the Necronomicon is bound in skin anywhere? Because I feel like that's something that came from, like, Evil Dead. I don't think in Lovecraft's work, I don't think it's actually bound in human skin. I don't think it says that anywhere. It doesn't give many details about it, actually. And see, here's the thing about Lovecraft's work. Let me just, like, kind of, like, get this out there for people that don't really get this. Lovecraft, when he was writing his stories, he wasn't necessarily thinking about it like, this is going to be my big interconnected universe. So there's lots of things that are vague. There's lots of things that are contradicting. You know, like both Hastar and Nyarlathotep are referred to as like the king and yellow at some point in time, even though both of these beings are two separate entities. At certain points in time, it's said that Cthulhu worships the Great Old Ones, and at other points in time it says that he is one of the Great Old Ones. So it's kind of like... It's not like... It's loosely connected. It's not like Stephen King, where it's like he came into it with like, oh, I'm going to make this connected universe. It's not like he wasn't thinking about that. People looked at all of his stories later and like put them all together. And then also, since Lovecraft, a bunch of other authors have come in and written within that mythos. And a lot of people have the idea that the original body of like Lovecraft's work was more connected because other people have gone in and like added those connections when they weren't like previously there. Right? So that's totally Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people don't know that, and they think that Lovecraft had this whole like universe in mind, but he really, really didn't. They are really just kind of like standalone stories that like you don't have to read another story to like get the gist. You know what I mean. You get what I mean. But also at the same time, saying that, I think that because it is like that, and because there are those contradictions, and because AK says she has a copy of the Book of Shadows. You gotta send me that on Twitter. I totally want to see what yours looks like, because like I feel like people are super covetous of my Book of Shadows. Like I posted it on that like Charmed Facebook group just to like brag about it, and people were super into it. But anyway, I think it makes sense that Lovecraft, that his work is like that. It adds to it, because it's like in the mythos, it's like everything that we know about great old. We went over this in the stream yesterday, which you guys should check out too. Everything that we know about the old ones and all of that stuff comes from the gods like sending out psionic energy and different people picking up scraps of information from like their dreams, from like different bits of writing. So it's all like loosely tied together and like translated into like different languages and retranslated and like like enunciated. That's why like whenever somebody is like, oh, the name is pronounced like this, I laugh, because like names like Nyarlathotep and Cthulhu, like in the stories, it literally says that a lot of these are just like phonetically sounded out from stuff that people have heard in dreams. So it's like there's really no actual pronunciation. So it's like all tied together like loosely like within the universe. So it makes sense that like there are these contradictions, because it's like these are stories from like different people that have encountered different things and only have a little bit of the big picture. So I think that's an awesome vibe when you think about it like that. Someone says there's no such thing as actual magic and it's easy to prove. Is it? Well, I guess you don't know about the underground wizard world, and no one tell him. Nobody tell him. Actually, just no one tell him. Actually, everybody else in the chat was gonna like let you in on it, Underhill. We were gonna let you into like the secret wizard club that we like go to like every night after the streams. But because you just said that, because you denied our existence, we're not gonna let you in on our magical world of magic and powers. So, no telekinesis for you. No fire starting ability. You don't get anything. Nothing. Could have been a powerful sorcerer, and we were all rooting for you. But you denied magic, so can't help ya. Oh, that's super cool, AK. That's super cool. Yeah, it's funny loving things from the 90s, AK, because like when you like rewatch some of it and it's like, what the heck is going on with this? Charm definitely had its problematic moments for sure. Yeah. Okay. Don't tell him. So, yeah. I'm looking... I said on Twitter the other day that I need some recommendations for winter. So do you guys got any, like, good book recommendations that are fun to, like, read in winter? I've been meaning to ask everybody about that, because, like, I need some. I'm thinking about... I'm kind of feeling like I'm going to go back to fantasy a little bit. Like, I started, like, rereading Monstrous, and I'm just like, oh, God, I need some more fantasy junk happening. But, like, a good, like quiet, cerebral, lonely sci-fi book would be good, too. Because I really love, like, the lonely sci-fi vibe, where it's just maybe, like, a couple characters, they're, like, in, like, an isolated place. Maybe it's kind of spooky, like Blindside, Peter Watts. A Wall Around Eden. That's an interesting title. A Wall Around Eden. So The Wall Around Eden is a 1989 post-apocalyptic science fiction novel by American microbiologist and science fiction writer John Slonzeski. I cannot say people's last names. It was first published in the United States in 1989. You just said that. A global nuclear war has left Earth uninhabitable except for a handful of settlements around the planet. These communities have been protected from nuclear fallout by air walls erected by aliens using force fields. Interesting. So aliens protected them from nuclear war. That might be something that I could get into. Eisenhorn Trilogy by Dan Abnett. First and Last Man by Olaf Stapleton. The Eisenhorn Trilogy. Oh, this is Warhammer. You guys are always trying to get me into the Warhammer. Interesting. Okay. Destination Void by Frank Herbert. Andromeda Strain. Between Two Fires. Pretty good for winter. Set in medieval times. You know, one of the best, like, wintry books that I read that was fantasy. I don't know if it's, like, one of the best, but I had a great time reading it because it was also winter while I was reading it. The Bear and the Nightingale by, I'm blanking on the writer's name. Catherine Arden. Yeah, that was a good one. And I read it, like, during winter, so I was, like, it was, like, just, like, the perfect time to read it, and it's just about this girl who's, like, a witch, and she's been promised to the Winter King, and it was just good. It was just a perfect, quiet little series about, like, these people that lived in this tiny, like, little Russian village in, like, the Middle Ages, and it's, like, snowing all the time. It was just really good. I liked that one. That's one of the last fantasy books that I read before I, like, kind of went off fantasy for a while. I haven't, like, not that I haven't read any fantasy since then, but that was one of the last, like, ones of during my era of being, like, really into fantasy. The music is nutty. Yeah, the music is all by James Dahl. Link in the description. And James Dahl actually does all the music for this channel, Quinn's Ideas. All the music that you hear, the theme song, all of it is James Dahl. A lot of people ask me about the old theme song. Let's address this. A lot of people are always like, Quinn, why did you change the old theme song? I loved it so much, the old theme song. Well, the reason I changed the old theme song is that all the other music on my channel was Quinn's Ideas music. You're not going to hear it anywhere else but Quinn's Ideas, right? And that original theme song, Strange Stuff, was not mine. It is royalty free, but a lot of other people can use it, and there have been times where I've been watching other people's videos, and that music pops up, and people will be like, oh, this is the Quinn's Ideas music, or yada, yada, yada. So, because we didn't own that music, we just had to get a similar sounding track produced. And I think that the track that we have now is very, very good. I really love the new soundtrack. I think that it's growing on everybody. I think that it was a nice... It didn't sound like so different where it was like, it's so different and jarring. So I feel like it improves upon the sound of the original theme song, but it's original. So yeah, and there it is. James Dahl just posted the link. You can listen to the whole new version of the Quinn's Ideas theme song. It's not even the new version. It just is the Quinn's Ideas theme song because the original music wasn't actually the Quinn's Ideas theme song. Someone says Henry Cavill is living the dream if he stars in a Warhammer movie. Well, you know, that guy is pretty good at everything he does. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, he wasn't given the best stuff to work with his role of Superman, but he was good as Superman, right? You look at him and it's like he is Superman. The same with The Witcher. He became The Witcher. So I think that Henry Cavill is a good actor, and I root for the guy. I feel bad that they fired him from Superman. I feel bad that they even did that to the guy. I can tell he was a little bit like he wanted to continue being Superman, and they like fired him. I thought Gal Gadot was good as Wonder Woman. You know, it's superhero stuff. Like, who cares, right? I feel like people take it too seriously. When did you realize that the horrific M stands for man? For me, it was 1/4 through Endymion. I don't know exactly when, but thank you for your super chat. Yeah, like I said, I feel like people put too much on these superhero movies. Like these are not huge masterpieces, right? And I'll say this time and time and time and time and time and time again. Taika Waititi's Thor is one of the best Marvel movies for the way it just kind of like totally does not take it seriously, and the way it just totally like satirizes everything, and the way like he really is just basically saying like, dudes, this is Thor. This is like a silly cartoon guy with a hammer. You know what I mean? It's not serious, and I love that he did that. And I gotta admit, I secretly kind of love how like the really really hardcore Marvel people were really freaked out by that movie. They really did not like that movie, and I thought, and I can see why, because it's like poking fun at them. It's on you for taking this so seriously when it's a Thor movie. And I just thought it was freaking great. I totally got what he was trying to do. And a lot of people aren't going to get that. And even if they do get it, they're not going to like that. So, yeah, I just thought that was great. I thought it was great. People were surprised Martin Scorsese didn't like Marvel. You know, let me turn off the music. It's loud in my ear. So, you know, the thing is, if someone likes Marvel, they're fun. They're fun movies. Like movies should be fun. I just get annoyed when Marvel fans are just like, when they're trying to force you to like it. I get that a lot from Marvel fans, and I don't understand what it is specifically about Marvel, the Marvel fandom and the Marvel community. It probably just because it's so wide. It's such a big community of people. But there's really this attitude where it's like, you will watch this and you will love it, and if you say anything bad about it, then like screw you, and you're just like this whole it's like, bro, I just don't care about the superhero movies. It's just like it's been a lot of superhero shit, right? And I feel like people are definitely getting burnt off on superhero shit. There's a lot of shit, and it's like all like tied into like a million TV shows and like a million other things, and it's just like overwhelming to the point where like I stopped caring about Marvel stuff like a really 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 long time ago. Like actually like caring and being concerned about the storyline like a long time ago, because it's mostly the same, and then all the characters are mostly like the same type of characters, and they all like have this like, I don't know. It's just there's not compelling really. You can only do it so many times before it becomes like not compelling anymore. You know what I'm saying? What is your opinion on Lovecraftian entities appearing supernatural but really just being so technologically advanced it appears magical? Well, we totally discussed this in the last live stream yesterday. That's exactly what we talked about. And in the Mountains of Madness, he basically makes it super clear that these elder things were not gods or supernatural. They were just very advanced. It's just very clear in that book that they were very advanced. So I think that is totally what the case is. Everything that we see about those entities in the Lovecraftian universe is relayed through like the minds of humans that didn't understand advanced technology. Thank you for your super chat, Dice Punk. Let's not get into any deep spoilers. Yeah, J-Star, I think it is part of the problem is oversaturation. It's just too much. And it's like the same type of stuff, right? It's like it's another superhero thing. And like another team of superheroes, another team of superheroes, another team of like who cares, right? It's like I love random things. I love it when a movie surprises me, when it's like just like a totally random thing. It's not connected to anything else. That's what I tend to like more. And the same with comics. I love it when comics are surprising and introduce new things. Like the same, it's like all of these characters too. We've been dealing with these characters for decades and decades and decades, like the same characters over and over again. There's some newer ones, but like most of these characters are pretty old. Okay. Someone says, I really tried to like the Mountains of Madness, but the ideas were so repetitive, in my honest opinion. Well, what do you mean by repetitive? Because, like we said, At the Mountains of Madness is obviously a story that's influenced a lot of work that has come out since, right? But it definitely does have a lot of similar threads to other Lovecraft things, for sure. Um, Even Star says, do you think the Three Body Problem series on Netflix will be 3 seasons, like one per book? I don't know. Oh, God. That's a good question. Because there's a couple ways that they could actually do that. Um, and I feel like the trend with TV shows, even when books have like these huge jumps in time, is to just like stay with the same characters, which is a little weird. But I feel like with Three Body Problem, you could maybe get around with that because of the fact that there is like the hibernation aspect of it. So I definitely see them keeping some of the same characters around, but this could go. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Like I hope for 3 seasons. You know what I mean? Because with Netflix, you're lucky if you get 1 season because Netflix is like notorious for canceling stuff. So we could hope we get 1 season of Three Body. Hmm. Let's get some water. Quinn, I was watching the Chinese Three Body Problem show, but I can't find it anymore. Do you know where to get it? Is it no longer on YouTube? Did they pull a bait and switch? Because it should be on the Tencent YouTube channel. Let's see. Yep, it's still available on the Tencent YouTube channel. I'm sure somebody can post a link. Wait a second. Now it is saying here that 28 of the episodes are now unavailable. Only the first 2 are available. No, but it still looks like they're all over YouTube. They've been re-uploaded and reposted. They're on YouTube. You should be able to find them. I'm looking now. It does look like the official Tencent page has actually like blocked all the episodes except for 2 of them. So I think they want you to pay for a subscription to Tencent. But they are still on YouTube and other places. Yeah. So that's a little weird. It's not weird. I know why they did it because they don't want to give them away for free. But I'm like, get the ad revenue. Like the ad revenue has to be worth something, right? Yeah. So you can find them. They're all over the place. They're all over the place. They shouldn't be too hard. If you just type it on YouTube, type the episode that you're on, you might be able to find a playlist or something like that. Quinn, have you seen anything about The Boy and the Heron? I haven't. I have not. BB the Bard says Twin Peaks is very cool and cerebral, but also silly and a parody of soap operas. Absolutely. And that's why it was, I think, so like. It's almost like Lynch doing an interesting experiment. Because soap operas were so big in the time that came out, and when Twin Peaks starts off, there's almost like no distinction. It's really interesting. Like when Twin Peaks starts off, it's really hard if you're not paying close attention to distinguish it from like just like a soap opera. And then as it goes on, like the weirdness of it all like slowly comes into play, and it just gets so dang weird and interesting and cool. And I also love Twin Peaks The Return. I love Twin Peaks The Return. So yeah, I dig David Lynch, and I like the Twin Peaks for sure. The Twin Peaks. See you in 25 years. Oh, Dark is great. Oh yeah, that's a great recommendation. If you have not seen Dark on Netflix, that is a great science fiction show. It's 3 seasons. It's finished. It managed to get to the end. Definitely try Dark. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it is a great science fiction experience for people that enjoy science fiction, and for people that like TV shows that you're just gonna want to binge. Dark, and it starts a little slow. But as it goes on, it's so good. It's one of the best things on Netflix, and I'm so happy that it didn't get canceled before the ending. So happy it didn't get canceled. So, I'll just mention one more time that my graphic novel campaign is running right now. We got 2 weeks left on this, and the link is in the description. So check it out. We got like videos on the campaign page that describe the story and all of that junk. So essentially, I'll give a little description of the story before we go. So the lie behind the store, the lie behind the star follows the Wanzalishi, who are this cast out civilization of people that eventually encounter these mushrooms, these odd mushrooms in these caverns beneath the earth. And these mushrooms are bioluminescent. I should get my music on for this, right? And these mushrooms... Wait, play! You're messing up the pitch. StreamYard is super weird with how it does the music. Let's get in there. Can you guys hear that? Play this one. Play the second one. You're making me look bad, StreamYard. There we go. There we go. So deep beneath these caverns in the earth, they encounter these mushrooms. These weird, pulsating mushrooms. And as they start to consume these mushrooms and live with these mushrooms for a while, they eventually understand that these mushrooms are actually responding to a signal from distant space. Yeah, I'm just showing off the wraparound cover. And as they consume these mushrooms, many in their society develop this ability to hear this signal from within their own minds. They can hear the signal calling to them. And eventually these 3 very special children are born, called the One Who Are 3. Right? And using what they've learned from the signal from these mushrooms, the Wanzalishi change these children, making them a part of the mushroom net. Like plugging them in so they become a part of the mushroom net. And around these strange children who are in constant communication with this signal, the Camorra, right? Around these children grew this immense mushroom city. This immense mushroom city. And these 3 who are 1 were able to manipulate the mushroom mycelium net by producing all sorts of biological chemicals, all sorts of biological matter and material, anything that they could think of, they could produce it. And it was said that they were in direct communication with Camorra at all times. And of course, in their society, the Camorra, which has helped them grow to this advanced society, which depends on biological technology, of course, they have developed religious and mystical significance associated with this Camorra. So it's developed this religious and mythical significance. And some people believe that it is the voice of a goddess, and that maybe the Wanzalishi are this goddess's chosen people. And eventually the One Who Are 3 say that we are going to go out and we are going to find the Camorra. We are going to search out the origin of the Camorra, because the One Who Are 3 can hear the will of the Camorra at all times. And it says that they are the only ones that truly know the language that it's speaking. And so they grow a biological vessel, and they send 9 young people who have the gift, who can hear the Camorra strongly, into outer space to seek out this signal, to seek out the origin point. But what do they find there? Because there's so much that they don't know about the Camorra. And the One Who Are 3, who hear it most intimately, are very secretive about what they're doing and their plans. So what waits behind the star? What waits at this origin point? That is what my book is about. That is what the story is about. Check it out. Link in the description. I and my artist, my partner, Matthew Weldon, we've been working on this one for 1.5 years, and we're so excited to finally be launching now. Like I said, we've got less than 2 weeks left for anybody to get their copy of The Lie Behind the Star. And we've got paperback, we've got paperback, we've got the ebook, we've got the audio book, we've got hardcovers, and there's also a variant edition. And we've also got signed copies available, and also higher tiers for people that want to go above and beyond with the support of the campaign. So before I leave you guys, I'll just share my screen again so that you guys can get a glimpse at the campaign if you have not seen it. And there is the campaign page. As you can see, we've done pretty well within the first few weeks. So you can check out the campaign. We've got almost 800 backers so far, and there it is. and you can scroll through the tiers here. And yes, I will be reading the audiobook. So that is the campaign. You can check all of that out. And it's been a super rewarding experience getting this made and working on this. And I can't wait to release it to everyone and get it out there next year. I'm so excited. Link in the description. I'm sure someone has posted the link in the chat. And I think we're going to wind down the stream now. Please check out the campaign. It means the world to me, and I'm going to try to not knock over any more books. Thanks for listening, everyone. I love you all so much. Peace out, and I hope you all have a wonderful night and sweet dreams, everyone. Peace out.